The views and opinions in this program are not those of CISA 7 or Spectrum.
Becker?
Here.
Maloney?
Here.
McCoy? Here. Sitnikow?
Here.
Shelton?
Here.
Here.
Warren? Here.
All right, all 7 board members are present, and this is our special board meeting to accept the leadership profile report that's been done by our superintendent search firm, Hazard, Young and Attia. And at first I'll entertain the recommended motion, and then we'll open it up for your presentation and discussion.
I move that the leadership profile report as presented be accepted.
Second?
Second. Nope, you got it.
All right, that's seconded, and at this point, I'll turn it over to our 2 consultants, Sarah Jerome and Pat Newdecker. Is that how you say that? Okay.
We are delighted to be here with you tonight and have had 5 wonderful days in your district, having the opportunity to hear from constituents, school communities constituents, 145 of them in 28 various sessions, and as well had an opportunity to read the survey feedback of 2,077 of your constituents. So while that is not, I believe, 61,000 households represented there, it is, in comparison to other surveys and focus groups, quite a good representation of numbers in districts of similar size. So we're delighted to be able to share some good things with you. This leadership profile is really for the purpose of sharing this snapshot with you. It's a snapshot in time involving the people who came to share their thoughts about the school district and its future. And it's for you, the board. And an additional byproduct is that it will be read by all of the applicants who are interested in coming here so that they can have anticipation of what the strengths are, what the challenges are, and what particular characteristics you're looking for. So we will go through that, and just to follow along with the process, we are in the first phase, the engagement phase of our search process. We also simultaneously are in the recruit phase. So we have been actively engaged with several levels of recruitment. When we were in our focus groups, about 30 names were given to us because we, of course, asked for nominations. And so we are in the process of following up with those to see if they have some interest in applying. And some have responded yes, and some have responded no, thank you. And others' names have come up through the survey. So we have those nominations too. So we are delighted to have people who know people that might be interested. And so we're definitely pursuing that. And then the next phase will be the selection phase, and you will certainly be riveted in that part of the search process. And then, of course, once you've made that selection, the transition phase. So our planning session was with you October 24th. The survey window was October 28th to November 11th. We had phone interviews with each of you, and the community survey, and the 28 focus groups, and the one virtual meeting. And we met with the focus groups and some individual interviews on November 5, 6, 14, 15, 12, 13, 14. You can see on page 3 of the engagement materials that you have in front of you, the breakout of who came to the interviews or in the focus groups. And we did correct a number. Perhaps you picked that up when you first read it, that we reversed the 291 with a 219, but we've made that correction for you. So in terms of strengths, people came, we were delighted to see people who'd really prepared for these sessions. Many of them brought notes. They had thought about this, they wanted to share and reflect with us on what they were proudest of. And so one of the things that came through with every session is the diversity. People are proud of that, and they recognize that that brings to this community potential for all to be enhanced by multiple cultures, multiple languages, multiple traditions. And they saw that as a great benefit not only for the school district but for the entire community. Technology was another thing that they were extremely proud of. The fact that the district is prepared for 21st century learning. And they did recognize that additional professional growth would enhance the incorporation of all of this into the classroom learning. But that great strides had been made with technology, and they were proud of that, and it's getting recognized not only locally but with national recognition as well. The staff was viewed as another strength with 3,000 employees, 1,096 of them with advanced degrees. People who love this district, who are dedicated to it and care about its future. That came across in every single meeting. The facilities were also something that people are proud of. They saw the 42 facilities as being very well maintained. They appreciated the 2017 referendum that helped move the district forward with regard to facilities. And they also recognized that both the community survey and the research that is going on related to the study redesign 2020 is all a part of thinking ahead about facilities. And then the strengths of supportive community and community partnerships was in every session repeated with great pride that this community of 90 plus partnerships, 42 corporate partners, 2 higher ed institutions, 38 nonprofits, and 8 municipal partnerships were valuable opportunities to extend the education for every child in this district. So all of those were consistent with the strengths that came through in the survey as well. So there was a coherence to that and a coordinated perspective. The challenges were significant and concerning, but also people viewed it with hopefulness. A great start with the collaborative commitments that you recognized and passed on 9/24/19, and the recognition that more learning regarding effective boardsmanship is crucial to a high-functioning district. Communication was another piece that was a challenge, and we might parenthetically say that with every single large district, communication is a challenge. We recognize many wonderful things that had been mentioned with regard to the efforts for communication, and that it's a two-way street. Not only does information get put out, but it also has to be read and consumed by the recipient. So it is definitely a multiple partnership in communication. And it clearly is something that the staff seems to be both concerned about and committed to working on. Closing the achievement gap and the meeting of individual student needs go really hand in hand. And we recognized, and it was brought up, the strategic priorities of 2018 to 2023, the progress that's been made so far, and the recognition that significant progress needs to be made. Some concerns regarding diverse members of AP classes and college prep certainly needs to be worked on. And then the balancing of autonomy and accountability. A number have recognized how it is a mixed blessing. There is a beauty to having autonomy, and some saw it as autonomy and no accountability. Others articulated that there was way too much rigidity and structure and not enough autonomy. So it's something clearly that needs to have further discussion and perhaps balance. And another part of that accountability and autonomy is a distribution of equitable resources. And that came up with regard to the autonomy and accountability as well. So that leads us to who can do this job, and that's Pat's responsibility.
Not that I can do this job, but no. Thank you. And I think Sarah and I both want to say in this transition into the next part that the report does not intentionally call into focus any current superintendent, current administration, or anything, but we all certainly recognize that the accomplishments and the characteristics and the pluses of this district would not be happening if it weren't for leadership, administrative team, working with the board and the incredible staff that we've already mentioned. So just want to make sure that you know usually we don't write about individuals, but they certainly are threaded through a lot of these comments, and we did hear that. So I'm going to transition into the list of desired characteristics. This should not be a surprise to anyone. This is the work that a superintendent does. What the report will help us and help future candidates understand is the priorities. So the first one, obviously, somebody who's highly skilled with board relations and governance. And that goes without saying. You are a large school district. You have a lot of moving pieces. The relationship between a superintendent and a board is critical. And it takes work and it takes development and it takes hard work over time. So anytime you would have a transition with a new superintendent, I would be surprised if that were not an issue. But some of the things people asked for and called out specifically was they would like to see an environment of more trust and respect across the board, a clearly delineated role of the board and the superintendent, working more collaboratively to work on district priorities, and then fostering a new superintendent who could hopefully help foster an understanding of how you develop a board with a superintendent to become a team. Those were some of the comments or the issues that came to be. I think Sarah and I, from being in the business, know a great superintendent makes a great board, and a great board makes a great superintendent. It is definitely an interrelationship. Number two, again, not a surprise, in line with your challenges as well as your strengths, someone who has successful experience with creating equitable practices. And you should know in the application process right now, candidates are submitting their letter of interest, their resume, and also a written statement of how they have worked towards equitable practices in their current position. So that's part of their application right now, and we certainly will use that as a screening tool as well. And it goes without saying, demonstrates fairness, advocates for all students and their needs, aligns resources and equitable practices, uses data and understands how you use data to identify barriers that keep you as a district and your students and your families from moving forward. Some of the personal characteristics, a relationship builder, obviously, in all of our work, yours and ours, someone who would build strong relationships and continue the relationships that have already been worked on in this community because of the leadership in this school district. Somebody who would also take time to develop relationships with staff and students. And this is an ever-present challenge. This is everybody wants a piece of the new superintendent, and you are a large district, but somebody who will find a way to make sure that they, like your past leader, is connected with people and shows up at events. That was very, very important. Someone who is a strong communicator, obviously, someone who fosters trust and respect internally and externally, uses honest, factful, genuine approaches when communicating, somebody who can bring their public relations and marketing skills in concert with what's already going on in your district, somebody who can model the effective use of technology as a communication tool, and somebody who is a positive face of the district and a good listener. I think we could probably all work on those characteristics. We also found, and we would be in agreement with this, that people spoke at length about somebody who has demonstrated, and we have evidence of their successful past performance. And that will come into play especially when we screen and interview. Part of it is the equity statement they're writing, but also we will definitely ask for evidence and examples of the work that they've done. I think we will certainly not overlook any candidate, but we know that the type of job that this is, because of the size and the complexity of your district, somebody with experience would probably be a bit more desirable than somebody with less experience. Somebody who celebrates diversity, again, going with your top 5 strengths of your district. Somebody who really understands and not only respects and celebrates those cultures, but then knows how to recognize, champion open pathways, mitigate barriers, those types of things to make sure that everyone in the community understands. It was mentioned often that you are a leader in the Green Bay community, that you are ahead and you're dealing with diverse issues, and that the community is looking to you to continue that leadership. So a superintendent that can partner with you on that would be desirable. Someone who understands the legislative process and can be a legislative advocate. We heard stories and very successful evidence of work that had already taken place in the Green Bay area, the way that you've engaged with your community in understanding taxation and funding issues, and as well as how you appropriately use the legislative process to bring an understanding to the decision makers so they understand your needs. That was a priority. Community engagement, I think, goes without saying, being visible, participating, but also continuing those partnerships and maintaining those partnerships that have begun, working collaboratively with the school board, the staff, and community members, and the ability to bring groups together on key issues. We also were able to identify a need for, I think I just clicked this up one, leading systemic change. Again, none of these are a reflection that these things are not happening right now, but certainly to take your district to the next chapter, the next phase, is going to require somebody who is really a systems thinker and somebody who understands all the pieces that are in play and how important it is to understand those relationships of what it takes to move a large organization forward. And that is a systems thinking approach. Somebody who can display the ability to identify root causes of problems and issues and then implements those systemic and strategic strategies. Personal characteristics, again, obviously trustworthy and open-minded. That goes with the active listening. We heard great comments like someone who can realize that the superintendent is not always the expert and might have the ability to identify, engage those who are experts before moving forward with decisions. Seeking first to understand before being understood. Those are leadership characteristics. Realizing that the need to seek out facts and information is important. Someone who is visible and accessible. Some of these are in concert with what has already been said, but being present, approachable, genuine, a high sense of humor, high energy, and somebody who interacts with confidence, somebody who can be the face of your district and represent you well. And then, as we mentioned, we will not overlook any candidate or their background, but it's important to know that we will be looking for somebody who, with an understanding at least, and more importantly, experience with understanding the operational skills that are required of running a large district like yours. This might not be a first job for a superintendent. So developing and implementing effective and efficient practices within large systems, the ability to build teams, organizing people and resources around goals. It's really about mobilizing and using leverage to move you into the next chapter of your work. Someone who certainly understands the scale of the operations here, who can empower and motivate, can be a big picture thinker, but also pay attention to details and look for accountability measures as you're growing and changing. And I believe that pretty much summarizes the categories. And the way that we were able to determine these was from the survey as well as all of our interviews and pull those together. So the last slide just highlights for you the top 5 characteristics that came off the survey data that you also have. And so I'll read those just for the record and for public information. But out of the 20 possible responses, the top 5 desirable strengths across all survey categories were, again, fostering that positive professional climate of mutual trust and respect among faculty, staff, and administrators, somebody who can recruit, employ, and retain effective personnel throughout the district and its schools, somebody who can understand and be sensitive to the needs of a diverse population, establishing a culture of high expectations for students and personnel alike, and someone who can provide transparent communication. So I think there's a lot of good news in this report. As Sarah said, we heard people who are very proud of this district, many who had a history, some who came to it as perhaps new families or new members or new community members, but definitely a sense of pride and a growing sense of pride, and certainly a thankfulness for your staff, the technology, the buildings, and the work that's been done. So we will be doing our work to use this profile as our screening tool so that we make sure of all the characteristics we're aware of in a superintendent. We hit the highlighted ones as a priority. Looking for that evidence, looking for past experience, and a genuine way that of somebody who can work with you to work towards your goals. So with that said, that's the formal part, and we'd love to have a dialogue with you or answer questions, or however you have had more time to look at this, and you also received the survey information. And again, we took the survey information and all the data from our interviews and melded that into the report. So it's documented and the evidence is there for you, but hopefully it was a little easier to read that summary. What can we help you with?
In taking all the data from the survey and from the listening sessions, would you say that you had a very broad range of comments that you had to find a way to kind of narrow down, or would you say that your overall, all of the feedback that you got from the variety of sources was pretty similar? How would you respond to either of those? You push the
Sure.
microphone. Thank you.
It seemed mostly congruent to us, and we saw on the survey, when you look at the disparity between along those dots of the highs and the lows, that too showed a congruence. So we, though, I mean, of course, 145 people and 2,000 others on survey, I mean, they each have their own opinions about things, but there did seem to be, I think, a certain understanding of what the district has done and where it needs to go and what it needs to do next.
I would agree, and I think that on the wrong one, sorry. Hopefully that will come through in the report, as well as looking at the kind of the cross-tabbing between the survey and then the anecdotal responses that we had to do to come up with the clusters or the themes. But I would agree, much more similar. And a compliment to you, you had extremely high survey responses. And to get over 2,000 responses is incredible. And there really didn't seem to be an underrepresented group. I don't know statistically what the percentages are, but we had great representation from all the 6 groups that you asked for. I think their voice was heard, as was the case, I think, in all of the listening sessions. So you raise a good point. I would say with confidence, we can say there were no outliers, and there did not seem to be difficulty across the groups.
Andrew?
So we only had, and I understand that the survey results were, the survey numbers were better, but with only 2 students in the student session, how does that compare to other large districts that you work with?
A number of districts do not include students in their interview process. Sometimes they do include them in the survey, sometimes they don't. So there's not really a standard by which we would judge that.
And I think additionally, we certainly applaud your effort in capturing student voice. And at the same time, we all recognize how difficult that can be, because we all sometimes, I think, perhaps live under this assumption that if you ask 10 students, you know what all students are thinking. And students really I think, don't represent all student voices. It may be something you take a look at as we look at candidates. Something you could do is put together perhaps a more organized group of students that you would want to maybe meet this candidate. That's one thing we can do. I think, while, again, the challenge, if you will, while we tried to be most inclusive by sending this to middle school and high school students, I think we would kind of guess that a middle school student's understanding of what a superintendent does may not have been captured in a survey. In fact, we did hear from some students as we were out and about. Perhaps some principals said, well, the students said they weren't clear on what the survey meant or what some of the language. When you think about it, it really is an adult survey. So I think we made a great effort, and you were wise in trying to include them. I think we can continue that and maybe do it more of an organized way when you get to the finalists.
And I'm sure we'll have more students when we get to the finalists. I get where there's going to be more interest when there's finalists to meet than this, but at the same time, I guess in looking at, I guess I'm still interested in, like, have you done some number of large districts that included students, or are you just like kind of nicely saying we're the only one that's done it of a large district?
Well, you're the largest district that I've done. So I would say Monona Grove might be the next district size, and maybe I take that back. Probably a West Allis, West Milwaukee. I did that one. I don't believe students were even included on the survey, if I recall.
None of the districts that I've done searches for used students as a part of their either focus group or survey.
I think, if I can be honest, here's the dilemma we all live with. We're about students. We're about student engagement, student voice. We want that. A superintendent's job is about leading a huge organization. These are very, very highly developed skills. I think you will find some students who understand that. It's more likely that they're going to say things like, I want a nice person. I want a person who's going to come to my school. I'm going to want to know this person. And those are characteristics that I think are threaded through in things like visibility and being accessible and those types of things. I cannot personally guarantee a student's understanding of the real dynamic of what a superintendent does.
I think most students relate to the superintendent who calls the snow day.
Yeah.
Or doesn't.
Yeah, that's usually, you're right, that's usually it would not be unusual for someone to say, we have a superintendent, or what does a superintendent do? Younger students, frankly, might not know that. You would not communicate that. Sorry, we couldn't get more
Well, I don't know that I'm saying that it's you that didn't get us students. I just wanna make sure we get it right next time and get the numbers of students there. So, I'm, I guess, happy for us and maybe disappointed in others that it's rare to not even have students on the, not even in the survey part is interesting and disappointing, but that's not us. We did. We had them in both, so.
Well, and I think, as I said, we could capture that in a variety of ways, but moving forward, since we'll be doing the screening against the characteristics, then I think we can ask students very specifically. You could include them in the interview process in some way. We could do open forums in some way. You could do an organized session whereby, with some more lead time now, because remember how quickly this did come up. And I'm not making an excuse, but I do know how busy kids' lives are. And for students to show up after school to do a session like this, the students that did come really should be applauded for that. So maybe we can think differently about how we reach out and maybe use your building principals or something to actually select representatives across section of a school. There's a lot of ways I think we can work with you to make that happen. My suggestion would be when you get to the finalists, probably not in this first category of 8, but when you get down to your 3 finalists, we could certainly work with you and we can lead those sessions for you if you'd like.
Thank you. Yep. Well, there's, it answers my question. Thank you.
Rhonda?
I have similar concerns about this, the lack of student voice as well. But, you know, I'll just move on to something else. So I'm wondering about, I know there was a mention about the celebration of diversity. So when I hear that, I think of, that's actually about the person you're asking, that they're celebrating diversity, and it, to me that becomes about that person and not necessarily about the student body and what they need. So I'm curious, in looking at that, knowing that we do have disproportionality issues in the district, that's a fact. I feel like some of this doesn't go far enough for me, the profile. I'm concerned about, there's a lot of discussion about equitable practices, but there's really nothing specific. It feels too broad. There's nothing really, I'm not hearing anything about restorative when it comes to, you know, practices. And I just feel like that's a word that should be included in there. And then also, I think there needs to be some commitment to professional development around unconscious bias when it comes to our student population. We know that our student population has significantly changed since the last time we hired a superintendent. And I believe that, and I wasn't here during the leadership profile creation of that, but I would wonder how much different that leadership profile, what that looked like back in that time. There are members of the board who were there. I would wonder about that. So I'd wonder, and I would hope that we could be a little bit more specific, because what I'm hearing is that you're going to take this profile and put it out there, and I'm concerned that it's so broad that someone can find their way into this in some way, some forum, right? Maybe. Well, that's what I'm concerned about.
Well, let me see if I can help, because when you get to this point, this is really a transition. This report is a summary of what we were told. To be frank, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to edit or add our thoughts of what's needed. I think the healthy part in this report is that your community is proud, recognizes, celebrates, whatever words were used in here, the fact that you have a diverse population. Now, what needs to happen in order to serve all students really falls under your achievement gap section. You mentioned disproportionality. So that's where those type of issues would come up. And I'm not sure if the people we interviewed would actually know we need to do this, this, and this. What we heard in the strength category was this was something to be celebrated, and that perhaps the community had not caught up with where your school district is. And so the board and this new superintendent is going to have to continue to lead to help your community understand what being a diverse community, a growing diverse, a majority school district means in a community that is not really that way. You have different dynamics. So I do hear what you're saying, and I don't want to brush over that in any way, but I think the strength lies in our ability to screen and definitely your ability to hire. That's where that comes in, because this report would not, if we didn't hear it, it would not be appropriate for us to edit and put our thoughts in there of what's needed. Does that make sense?
And I want to add one more thing to the comments that you made. Those would be excellent points in questions that you might want to include for your interview session. Because, I mean, they're important topics. There's no question about that. But as Pat said, those were not ideas expressed to us. So to insert them would be artificial.
And you are alike any school district.
Can you hit your, sorry.
You are very much alike any district with a diverse population. And a superintendent worth their keep, frankly, is going to know what that's going to take to work in this environment, to keep moving it forward, to close your gaps, to mitigate those barriers. And part of that is and I don't want to paint a broad brush that just because you're diverse, you have these challenges that drag and weigh you down, because that's not what we heard. We heard that that was a plus in this. People loved the fact that this school district, people said they sent their children here because that's how they wanted their children to grow up. So you have incredible strength in that. And then taking that to now, what do you do because of that? How do you understand culture? How do you understand how you communicate with different populations? What are language needs? How do you close that gap? That is where you will be, with our help, certainly on your toes when you interview and you ask for specifics about how they can do that.
Christina? Oh, sure.
Thank you. So to all of that, but at the end of the day, we still need to, you're going to go out and you're going to vet some candidates. Is this the next steps? Is this how this works? From the leadership profile. Okay, so, and then you're going to bring us how many candidates? Okay. Okay. So, okay. So to understand that, what happens from tonight moving forward, where do you go to find out, you have a profile, you have the survey results, you have the commentary. Where do you go to find out when you're looking at these candidates? Do you, what groups do you talk to in the communities that the people are coming from? Are you going there? What kind of references do people put forward? I'm just curious about what that.
We don't visit the districts, but we often do know who's applying, and we know people that they work with. So that gives us some understanding of what they can do and how they do it. But there are some people that will apply that we don't know, and we don't know who, we don't have firsthand knowledge of the references, but we call them before we bring them to you. And so there will be an additional process of vetting by going online to see what else is written about them. The same kinds of things that are done typically with every hire that's in most school districts, that we do the search of their resume, their work experience, their references, and what happens online about them and what's written about them. We then bring them to you, and you will then move from whatever number it is, 8 to 3 perhaps, and there will be further vetting. And then if you get to 1, you would likely have a Baker Eubanks or some other investigative group go even further into the background.
And I think one clarifying piece is, if I remember right, Rhonda, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure if you were here the night we did the planning meeting. It seems like, were you here the planning meeting and not the presentation? I think I missed you on one of them. But, so just to reiterate, we will do a face-to-face through Zoom or an interview with every okay, so you know that, that's the next step. But even though you are looking at this profile tonight, remember your posting has been out there. Your posting has been in a variety of sources. We already have applicants, so we have applicants ahead of your profile coming out. People who read the description that you agreed to and submitted that said who you were as a district and what you were looking for, and that's what the little posting is. And we're getting applicants from that. That's who, now we use this to screen that bigger pool. That's kind of the next piece, but that's been going on simultaneously while we've been talking to your community. So we have applicants in the hunt group already.
So we are not able to contribute to this profile at all tonight, is what I'm hearing.
I believe each board member had the opportunity to contribute in our phone interviews with each board member.
Individual, yeah.
In response to approving this.
Accepting it. I think the language is accepting.
What would be your concern? What could we help with? Because I think moving forward, we have to be able to show that this represents you. This is what we heard, and that people who are reading this are going to be anxious to come here. So what piece are we missing, perhaps?
Well, I can't speak for anyone else, but I have heard from others that read the profile and wanted to have me share their thoughts on that, and their thoughts were, in fact, not touching enough on making that diversity word a little bit more specific. And it's not to say that these are things that drag the district down. It's recognizing that the student population does need someone who's committed to those things, to someone who is committed to unconscious bias when it comes to professional development, someone who's committed to reducing the disproportionality in the district, someone who's committed to recognizing that the challenges are real and that you can have those at the same time. You can have the diversity, you can celebrate that. So I'd like to have that.
Go ahead, Christina.
Thank you, Rhonda. I appreciate what you're talking about. And I think when I was looking at this profile, the way I was thinking about it is that there's value in examining what the feedback says, but also a value in examining what the feedback doesn't say. And I think, to me, accepting the profile means that we accept that the work has been done, and this is what the feedback that people gave, and this is the categories. These are the categories that we've deemed to be sort of the high-level through lines, right? Where I see our responsibility coming through as board members is to take that and then to, through governance and oversight, understand sort of those other pieces that we know are going to be critical from where we sit, and sort of marry the two, right? Because we can't change the profile because it's what people said, but we also, through our board perspective and our own lenses, we know we're going to vote on it and go through that process. Does that make sense? So that's kind of how I see it, is the profile is this, it says things, it doesn't say things, and then we have to pick that up and basically work and mold it to find the best candidate that's going to be in the best position. So I don't know if that...
And to your point, I think, Rhonda, what you just mentioned would be, as Sarah said, a perfect interview question. Your question about unintentional bias, a superintendent coming into this district should be asked a question, what's your experience with, and how will you lead a staff through a process that will help them uncover their unintentional bias? That's where we are in our country right now. So the fact that, to your point, Christina, that people didn't call it that or say that doesn't mean it won't happen. I think, frankly, they don't even know that there's such a thing. The paragraph under diversity and the narrative does call, into focus things like this person will have to understand how achievement gaps are closed and how you make progress towards mitigating those barriers. So I think it ties diversity with achievement, which frankly is what the issue really is.
I hear
Andrew?
you. I would disagree with that, though. I would say that achievement gaps, sometimes we forget about all those other things. I mean, fine, we can accept this, but I'm hoping that and you're confident you can find candidates that can come forward.
We're confident we can ask the right questions.
Okay.
And that we can go beat the bushes for you.
All right.
Can you hit your microphone?
We're confident that we will continue to work with you to craft the kinds of questions when we bring these people face to face that you need to hold their feet in the fire. I mean, they're interviewing you as well. They're looking at you as to whether they want to come here. So I would think they would expect to hear that from you. They're probably going to want to hear that you're aware that these are issues we all have to work on, and these are strategies. Unpacking unintentional bias is a strategy. Those are strategies for getting at the bigger issues that we're addressing. And not to say that diversity creates achievement gaps, but sometimes there are issues, unintentional issues, and that's why we have underrepresented groups that show up in those populations. So I think we have to.
I guess what I would say to that too is I would want to be somewhat careful, and we talked about this at one of the meetings, about making it too easy from our profile to script your answer. We could, if we got too deep into the weeds of tell us what you did about these several branches of diversity that we care deeply enough about that we spent a lot of time talking about it, I'd rather it just seems kind of risky. And we talked about this at a previous meeting too. So I look forward to the responses, and certainly, those types of questions that Rhonda was mentioning, I think are important in the interview, and I'm confident that we'll get those in there.
Equity statement, remember, which we will read, and it should show a belief as well as an action. And I think that's how we'll get at that for you, or with you.
Anything else? Well, thank you for all your work. I know you spent a lot of hours. Did you want to say? Oh, right, yeah. Just appreciate all the work you did to put this together.
Lovely.
And we did put it in the report, but I think publicly we want to thank Sandy because she did amazing work with helping us coordinate everything, be it everything from bottles of water to rooms to people to you name it. She really took care of us very well. So thank you. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you. And your staff. Your staff is extremely helpful.
All right. So we have a motion on the table. Sandy?
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Sitnick?
Aye.
Vanden Heuvel?
Aye.
Becker?
Aye.
McCoy?
Aye.
Shelton?
Aye.
All right, carried 7-0, and we look forward to next time we see you. So,
Revised calendar.
Yes. If I may, we did bring, and I believe you will be having this in your the board portal or the Google Drive, if you will, an updated calendar. And if we can just call your attention to one thing you might want to start thinking about. I'll wait till everybody has a copy. The application process obviously is still open, and it will remain open until you until we fill this position. And it states that. But we did put on there that we will be doing our initial screening on beginning January 5th, and bringing a slate to you on January 20th. So if you look down to January 20th, we've been on track and in line with what's going on till there. That would mean that after that January 20th meeting, you would have probably till about the latter part of February to interview the slate. And that pretty much then is in your hands with the help again of Sandy or whomever, of how you're going to then identify your semifinalists from that. Once you just determine your finalists, then we would come back, if you request, to do some of these community input sessions again, if you would desire. It could be the student group we just spoke of, as well as other community. And the way
Staff.
staff, usually your admin team would have a session, that might be more in the interview. We would have public evenings, and what we usually do then is have those candidates actually in front of people. So we can help you with that if you'd like. And it might be good, I know might be a little difficult to pick an actual date, but if you have an idea of when that might be and when you might be ready for that, and you can think about this and talk about it as you do your planning. But that's what we would need to know next so that we can come back and assist with you. When we present
If-
the
if you
slate,
want us
if
to
you
do
want
that.
us to do that. And when we present the slate, we can nail some as well. And the March 2nd date was a hypothetical. That certainly is flexible based on how you interview, how many candidates, how much community feedback you want. But just kind of keep in mind that by about the very latter part of February, if you're wanting to bring these 3 finalists, or however many, your final candidates in, and you want some of these sessions, we would come over and facilitate those. You might want to think about when that would be.
And just in terms of the sequence, after those interactions with the finalists, we would then bring that feedback to you prior to your having that final interview with the finalists. So you would have a sense of what your school community thought of your 3 finalists before you gave another round of interviews. That is often a typical way that boards get to that final interview.
And I've also seen though where they do the community engagement once you have your top pick too, one of 3.
That's right.
You might go through let's say you have 3. You might go through your 3 interviews, you have a favored candidate, but perhaps you want to know how your community, how your students, how everybody else feels. Then we usually do all this engagement with that top 1, because then you want to see them publicly. So we might have an evening session, and we'll rotate that, or we'll have that candidate show up and field questions from the audience. I think it's important for your stakeholders to know they are giving you input and feedback. They are not picking a candidate that they like or saying yay or nay. They're just giving you pros and cons of how that person would fit. So we can work with you on that. Just something for you to be thinking about as we move closer. And
think
these
the-
things are on your Google Drive, which is still in Google Drive. I think once we get close to having the applications for you for the slate, all that will move into your board portal. So you actually can go in and out and see the applications of the slate we'll be presenting. Good?
So, yeah, I'm just clarifying so I'm clear, because, so we will have 3 rounds of interviews according to this?
Typically, and we will give you the slate, and since we don't know yet how many will be in that slate, let's just say the number's 8. So you have 8 interviews, and you narrow down to your favorite top 3.
3. And that's the second round?
That could be,
Okay.
and then you, from that, you would then call us and say, it's time for you to be here, so you can host some community feedback sessions. And with regard to that interaction, then you could then take that feedback, and boards do it different ways. Sometimes if you want to be in the audience to actually see it firsthand, That's an okay thing in a way that wasn't so okay for the focus groups. That was a different circumstance. So once you get that feedback, you'll likely want to interview those 3 finalists again and get to one. And sometimes the one, then, if you feel some need to see them in their home district, you might make a site visit. But that's not required, and sometimes you feel so confident that you know the person and you know their work that that's not necessary. So all of this is based on so many things we don't yet know, but we can certainly adjust as we move through the process.
Okay. Because it's, if I recall, when we've done this in the past, did we have our finalists, so more than one person met the community and met focus groups, and we had two or three the first time? Both times? Yeah, the second time was 2, but the first time was 3, yeah. And I mean, so it's up to us to decide how we want that all structured. Yeah.
You'll want to have done enough homework ahead of time to get it to 3.
Right, yeah, okay.
And then it sounds like you have experience that can play out in a variety of ways. You know, and we'll work with Sandy and with you of how sometimes they put all 3 candidates in front of a community session. Sometimes they stagger them. Sometimes they're staggered, you know, by an hour. So people can come in and out and meet a candidate or whatever. It does sound like obviously a student group is something we'd want to work on, and maybe, you know, maybe a heads up, Sandy, and maybe your superintendent can even think ahead of asking principals to start thinking about how they might organize a group like that. And then we could facilitate a group of students and kind of have that ready to understand how we might want to be drawing on them.
They've done it before.
Yeah.
And we did it 3 separate days, right? Yeah, we had 3 full days of each
By
candidate
candidate,
came
maybe. Okay.
and
Touring
spent
the
the day
district.
talking to groups of people similar to the focus group, and then meeting the community in the evening, and or actually in the afternoon, and then we interviewed them that evening.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
so,
that works too.
okay.
There are
And that's
lots of ways to make
So
this
you don't
work.
have any strong it's more our personal preference as a board.
And see who
is
we
what
get and
decide.
What works best for you.
Sure.
And out
Okay.
of your 3, if they're all, you know, if you say, wow, these are 3 real strong ones, you might want the community, you might rely on the community feedback a little more.
Sure,
If you've
yeah.
got, there might be one that bubbles up. We'll have to see, you know, who you end up with in that final slate. But remember, and I do like your idea of a full day, because this is a big step, and, you know, people are most likely going to move their family here. So they're going to want to interview you and meet your community too. So it's very much a 2-way day.
Okay, all right.
So I think that sounds great, and we'd be glad
So-
to help with that.
And would you, I'm looking forward, knowing sometimes it's difficult to find all 7 of us available.
Yes.
So I'm looking ahead to saying, can we put these on can we, not today, because it's not on
Right.
put it on our agenda for our next meeting, but can we get these dates on our calendar ahead of time, which would require us to say what's the format we want. So if we interview 8 people, then we interview 3 people, we get those 2 dates on the calendar, and then kind of tentatively,
Then we'd know when we need to assist.
right, tentatively
That would be
say we
great.
want to do
That would be very helpful.
these 3 dates for the visits and that kind of thing.
Perfect.
And again, depends how many of the slate you want to interview. You know, if we
Right.
bring you 6 to 8, maybe you decide we're going to interview all of them, we're going to interview some of them.
Right.
That's why this is kind of a work in progress, but we can handle that with you, and like I say, this can, once you get candidates here and they know you're interviewing them, that March date is a nice thing to shoot for, but that can be a little flexible as well.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
when we meet with you on the 20th, that will
Yeah.
be a closed session because the application process is confidential, and that would need to be held in confidence.
Thanks, ladies.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you very
Thank
much.
you. We'll see you. Let's
Wish
see.
you the very best.
We'll see you after the next holiday. So happy
Yes.
holidays to all of
Thanks.
you. Yep. have a good meeting.
Thanks. All right, so I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the special board meeting.
So,
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll move right into our teaching and learning work session. And I've got we took roll call before the special board meeting, but I also want to introduce the rest of who's at the table. To my left is Dr. Michelle Langenfeld, our superintendent. We have two intercity student council members here tonight, Luke Pisani, who's president from Southwest High School, and Emma Pierce, who's also from Southwest High School. And then reminder to the public that you can view the board agenda and handouts as well as minutes from past meetings by visiting the district website at www.gbapsd.org, clicking on our district at the top and then Board of Education on your left. And then on that left menu, you will find a link to agendas and minutes. This link will take you to a website called Agenda Manager, where all board agendas, minutes, and handouts from board meetings are housed. Also, during tonight's meeting, we will provide our community with two different opportunities to speak before the board. The first is during our open forum, and the second opportunity is during agenda items where indicated by public comments. All speakers must fill out a form indicating their desire to speak. If you wish to speak during tonight's open forum, you may do so with respect to items that are posted on tonight's agenda or any other matter you wish to share with the board. Please know that Wisconsin's open meeting laws prohibit the board from conducting business on matters brought during this open forum. The board also will permit public comment during agenda items as noted on the board's agenda. During this public participation time, consistent with state and federal laws, board members may engage in dialogue with the speakers. In order that all voices are heard, the board will suspend engagement until all speakers have had a chance to speak. The process for speaking during our agenda items is as follows. The board will first hear the presentation and discuss the agenda item before calling on those who desire to speak. If you want to speak during a specific agenda item, please fill out a form and give it to the board secretary at any point during the meeting. And that's Sandy at the, if I forgot to introduce you, Sandy at the far left of the table. If you desire to speak and haven't yet filled out a form, just indicate that to the board secretary and you can fill out a form afterwards. The board secretary will provide the names of those wishing to speak to the board member conducting that part of the meeting, and you will be called upon to speak at the appropriate time. Please keep your comments to 5 minutes. Prior to starting your comments, please provide your name and address. So we have one person who, Marianne, you want to speak during open forum? Is that, you didn't check the box?
I don't know. Was under the assumption that this started for feedback for the involvement of concepts around the new superintendent.
Oh.
If we had input.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't have to speak. I have it typed out. If would rather go that route, that's fine.
Okay, I guess either, whatever you prefer. I mean, at this point, it would be during open forum then. I mean, it would be now if you wanted to speak, or if you just want to hand your written comments, we could take those too. Can you?
That's okay.
Yeah, and that's okay because it's the sideways profile, the person's face.
Yeah,
There it is.
Glasses.
There it is.
We're going to be gone January and February, so that's the heart of when you're doing a lot of your discussions. And I feel it's important as an educator and a taxpayer to come forward and at least share my feelings about the kinds of things we might want to look at, you might want to look at. So these recommendations are not necessarily intended to reflect on either past superintendents or the current superintendent of the Green Bay Public Schools. As an educator, I believe we must consider the holistic role that all educators play in various capacities. Therefore, as a taxpayer and an educator, I would hope that the next superintendent would at least be cognizant of the following kinds of things. to be and I don't have, this is how you get there, that's your job. But to be intelligent, experienced, and a visionary. To address current strengths and weaknesses of the school district and set goals to improve the educational system based on those findings. To be completely transparent and honest in decision-making in order to gain the community's trust. To engage the movers and shakers in thinking outside the standard box that we have come to know as education. To create trust in building staff, to return the teaching skill back to those who devoted their lives and learning to teaching. To learn from and acknowledge mistakes as well as our successes. To recognize that involvement in the community is vital to the role, while at the same time devoting time and energies to improve educational outcomes and successes for all students. To acknowledge the changing dynamics of this city, from a white middle-class majority to one that is more realistic representation of society. To be fiscally responsible and work at state and local levels to obtain the resources necessary to accomplish the new superintendent's goals. To view diversity of opinion as an asset in deriving decision-making. Place priority on spending resources closest to the student population based on equity, not equality. To believe in the potential of all students and provide program support and staff in an equitable fashion. Finally, parent support and involvement is vital to student success, and the superintendent should outline a plan to engage parents both at the building and at the district level. The new superintendent must possess strong leadership skills, which include his or her confidence in decision-making, effective communication skills, and be able to lead by example through garnering respect, empathy, support, and commitment to this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
I don't know how to turn this.
That's someone else.
There, I
will.
turned you off.
There we go.
Vanessa, don't turn me off.
All right, next is our teaching and learning work session, and that'll be facilitated by Eric Van Inhoevel.
All right, we have one topic to address. John, do you coming up to talk about carryover funds in the Head Start Fund? Head Start carryover request.
Thank you, and my colleagues are coming to the table. With me tonight to share if there are any questions, I have Sarah Jansen and Ann Barsh.
Hi. Yes, I invited a very special person in our program with us tonight that I'd love for you to meet, Ariane Pollard. I want to just take a stand. She was just recently elected for a second year to our Head Start Policy Council as the chair, and Ariane has a 3-year-old daughter enrolled in our Head Start program at Keller. So she's also on the superintendent's parent advisory committee. So wanted to come along and see what a school board meeting was like.
So we have three items tonight. The first item is the Head Start carryover request, and you received these in your agendas. The first one is the carryover from the 2016 grant, and if you have questions about that, Sally will be able to address that.
This carryover request, am I talking to this one?
Here.
Either one.
Pick one. Ooh, two of them.
Both of them. This one turned off now.
It is required that, like Ann had said, this is from our first duration supplement grant where we expanded full day services for 68 of our children at the start of the school year 2017. The grant, we've been spending the money on the Head Start Learning Center, but due to, lack of workforce and just the way things go with construction, we've needed to carry the money over. This is our third carryover on this grant, and it will all be spent by June 30th, 2020. So it is required of us to send this request to the federal government and to first get our policy council and our school board approval.
Oh, yeah.
You're in
Go ahead,
charge.
Brenda.
So your policy council has already approved this, is that correct? All three? All right, you've got a high five or a positive sign back there.
They approved the first two, the two carryover requests, and at our December policy council meeting, then they will be, we will be up for approval on the third item.
Usually
going.
you bring it to the board, the school board, before it goes to the policy council.
Depending on when the meetings
Depending on when
fall,
it is, yeah.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the second carryover request is for the most recent supplement duration grant that we received in March of 2019. So very little time to get anything spent on that by June 30th, 2019. So quite a large amount that we're requesting to carry over on this. And these dollars are for the renovation of the new West Side site. All right. Okay, and then the third is the facility application to renovate Jefferson Elementary School for a West Side Head Start program. This is another requirement of federal government. They require us to submit items such as a site assessment of the building, a cost estimate of the renovations that are planned, a detailed plan of the building and the renovations that are included, a deed due to their federal interest in the project. So Melissa Thiel-Collar, Mike Stengel, and Tammy Van and myself have been working on this application, so we're seeking approval. We need to send school board approval along with the minutes from this meeting, along with this application to federal government to get the final approval for the renovations.
Any questions on that? All right. Thank you for coming to present. And I believe that concludes our teaching and learning work session.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Eric.
One little stumble.
Next is organizational support, and that'll be facilitated by Andrew Becker.
All right, so under business and finance discussion item and public comments, we have two items. The first is the Jefferson Keller land exchange. Do we have any presentation on that?
Hello. As we worked through the 1303 report that Sally is completing that she just referenced, we know that we need specific space for a dedicated playground for the new Head Start building. The city moved the existing playground to further down in the park, which opened up a space for a playground for the district to put a playground for Head Start. Head Start communicated to us that we could rent the land from the city if we wanted to, or we could obtain the land from the city. If you look at the map where Jefferson is, back when the city and the school district were one entity, land was divided and cleared up when the school district and the city broke apart, but not all of the land was cleared up. And you can see a sliver of Jefferson hangs over into the city's property. When we were doing the Baird land swap, we were going to clean that up, and it's still on our list along with a few other schools that still need to be cleaned up. We have cleaned up some, including Eisenhower and Dan's, Jefferson was still on the list to clean that up. When we were talking about Jefferson, the city had discussed giving us the piece of property that we are coming to you tonight to approve, because they wanted to clear up to make the boundaries more clean and to give us some more property as well for the children to play on and our use for those sorts of facilities. So these discussions have been in the works prior to the Head Start establishment at Jefferson. The city has wanted to connect the trail that, and I'm going to forget the name of the trail, if any of you remember what the name of the trail is, but they have wanted to connect the trail that is in the city and then it goes over into Howard. And right now, because the railroad track is not abandoned, they cannot use the railroad track for purposes of that trail. So they're asking to go on the outer edge of the property of Keller to connect that trail, and they are open to exchanging the Jefferson property for that 20-year easement to be able to connect that trail, and by the end of the 20 years, they'll know if that railroad would be abandoned. The city council approved the land swap at their last meeting, so we just need your approval at our next board meeting.
No question.
Oh, go ahead.
What is the reference to Keller? But the Keller is the,
That's where the bike trail,
I think it's the Mountain Bay.
Mountain Bay.
Mountain Bay.
Yeah.
There's a section of property there that allows them to link that up without impinging on the railroad.
Okay. And is there a reason we don't have a handout with this?
It was in the update. It's in the update. Oh, in your update.
Right, but it's not public.
Can you bring that up, Lori?
And then we can get it in for the regular board meeting, a map and so forth.
I don't have any attachments. You want me to find it? Photo? No, I'm looking around before. I know we put it in the update.
Yeah, it was in
The
the
update.
Michelle's
I think it was.
Keep the microphone.
I think it was provided in a few updates, one or two of them at least. Yep.
And that's fine, but I had someone ask me this weekend, I had nothing to give them, and there was nothing to provide, so.
You didn't. You couldn't forward, okay. Because we give it to the board members too, so, okay.
But the question is, I guess, why wasn't it public?
It was never asked in the past. If you're asking now, we can put it on there for December 16th.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, and anything else on this one? Okay, and then we have school board member compensation and expenses policy, which was been carried over a bunch of times, and we just need to have a discussion on it and either do something about it or not. So anyone want to go first?
I attached the list of salaries of, I mean, Sandy had the entire list, but I just pulled out the ones that are local ones and then the larger school districts in the state for you to just see how they pay. And as you can see, it's there's not really a real consistency in pay. I know we've talked about increasing it primarily to help school board members who are considering running for school board. It helps compensate for babysitters and taking days off of work and things like transportation, things like that. And it's been $4,800 since for probably about 20 years with no increase. So I would be interested in hearing what other board members are thinking about that.
Christina?
So maybe this is unpopular, but I do think it's important that we think about our role here as work. Like, we are serving the community, but this is time, and it takes time out of people's schedules, not only for childcare, but out of other professional spaces. I'll speak for myself personally that whenever I was thinking about running and serving on the board, whether my husband and my family, we had to have some pretty tough conversations whether we could financially do it. If you think about the amount of time, and and I don't suggest that you do, but look at like an hourly breakdown of what you would make over an hour. And no one's here doing it because of the money.
I did that once, it was about 25 cents.
Yes, I was like, don't do that again. You're not here because of the money, but our time is work. And when we think about, to your point, Brenda, about who has interest in running and serving our community and our district, who has access to be able to do that, because if we're here, we're not working other jobs. I know personally, whenever I have to take off for board meetings for a full day, I don't get paid. I have to take an unpaid day off. And so I would really like to see us consider increasing the salary, because I know that if we want to continue to involve the community in serving our school district, I know that for me personally and for others, the compensation is a big barrier that we have to be sort of honest with. Nobody wants to frame it as we're taking away money from students and teachers and from the school district. I see it as an investment in serving. And if we want good people to do it, we need to demonstrate that we understand that their time is valuable. It takes a lot of skill, it takes a lot of professionalism and time to do this job and to do it well. We all can testify to that. Personally, I'll tell you very specifically, I think I'd like to see it go up to $7,500. I think that aligns well with the amount of time, and you look at what other boards get paid. I think it's fair. I think it's equitable, and I really like your point, Laura. I think you said a couple weeks ago about, and I'd let you speak about it, but I think you had brought up if the staff and if staff get raises year over year, that we would just be rolled into that as well. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, but that's kind of where I stand. I think it nerves me that we say it's unpopular to talk about paying ourselves, but the role that we serve in this district is just as vital as everybody else. And I see my time here as working to serve. And for someone who doesn't make a lot of money, I work for a nonprofit. The money that I make serving on the board does cover my costs to be able to pay for transportation, to be able to take off time, and to cover other expenses. And I'm grateful for what I make, but I do think I would like to see it increase. So that's kind of where I am.
Others? Rhonda?
So I definitely don't agree. I definitely agree that this is work. It's very intense work. It's very, very time-consuming work. And much like what you said, the money that we receive now does make a difference in my life. It does. That's absolutely not the reason I ran or ran for the appointment. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear. So the conversation is more about retaining or trying to find people to run. Are we looking to find a different demographic of people to run? Because we know people are running, right? Because the last two election cycles locally were very contested. We had 6 last race, 5 the race before. And I did some research, and it is definitely a fact that out of all the local offices, the Green Bay Area Public School Board races were the most contested, more than city, county, state assembly, and state senate. So we definitely have interest, as well as when there were appointments, we had multiple people signing up for that. So I just want to understand so that I know this is the motivation. So the motivation is to maybe be able to target parents. Is that what I'm hearing you saying?
Yes, I think there's always been people who are interested in serving on here. What I'm saying is that having the ability to put your time into serving while not working another job that's going to pay you, right, more and more equitable pay is the hang up for folks. Because if you're here, you're doing this, then you're not doing something else. And I know personally, and I can't speak for others in the community, that was a hard decision for me. And I have heard from others in the community as well that have said, I would love to run and participate and serve my community, but hour for hour, they're not financially, they can't afford it. They can't afford to put that time in because they need to be doing something else. And I think as we think about meaningful work, serving our community on the school board is meaningful work, and it deserves equitable pay. If we want to have more broadly diverse voices at this table, we have to recognize and honor that financial capital is a barrier for people to sitting here and participating in this conversation.
Can I go?
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, it's literally costing me money to be here. But I want to be honest, right? I really struggle with knowing that I still see, and it's out there, and if you haven't seen it, I'll forward the links to you because I have them. We still have teachers they need earbuds, they need school supplies. They're out there asking the community for that. It's really hard for me to accept this because I have 3 jobs now. This would be number 4. It's really, really difficult for me to accept that because of that reason. I'm really struggling with it. And so you said 7,500?
That was can I respond to your?
Yep.
Hey, I totally agree with you, but look, that conversation of what teachers need is a bigger conversation that we need to have around equitable spending and looking at everything from salaries to overhead costs to contracts to all of that stuff. So you're absolutely right. We have to do a better job to ensure that everybody gets what they need. And we have to ensure that we have good people sitting at this table who can make those decisions. So I hear you, but I see a broadening of opportunity to get more people to be able to do this job as a way to ensure that what you're saying is achieved. Yeah.
I agree. Again. However, we know what it's like to be elected, right? They can have interests, they can campaign, but I'm concerned about there's a power out there that basically you have more likely of a chance of being elected. So if this could solve those problems, because this is what I keep coming back to, is what problem are we trying to solve with this, right? Because that's the question. With any time we invest money. And so going back to the number, so it's like $625 a month is what that number would be that you said. Okay. So you feel is that what everyone feels like? That's the number?
I'll just respond to you.
Yep.
For me, whenever I was looking at, especially like the upcoming superintendent days that I'm going to have to take off and the extra hours that gets rolled in, and then committee meetings and such, when I looked at my time over the week and what I'm not doing at my other job or time away from my family that I could be doing not doing something else, but where I'm doing that's essentially what I looked at as being more equitable to cover that time. So I can only speak for myself, but that's kind of how I came up with that number.
There is we do have the, and I think that something I think there needs to be some increase on the overall compensation. I'm also wondering, the cost of living increase over 20 years has been I think the the 4,800 would be about 7,200 today if it was just federal cost of living index. Another thing to consider that is another important piece, and it's maybe easier to do something bigger with, is the the full day meeting stipend, which is the same $100 now that it was 20 years ago. So I think that should be looked at also, and that maybe is due for a substantial increase, because that is people taking a day off, a day off work, and that in most cases a missed day of work is over $100 with what wages are in this area now. I think that's worth a look as well. I think it should be, I think it should be more overall. I guess I'd be interested in whether or not this is something that maybe would be phased in over a couple years, or 2 to 3 years, rather than all at once. Is it something that would be, the federally, if Congress changes its raise, an election has to intervene first. We're elected staggered. Would you do something where, people with each of the next 3 elections, it goes up a certain amount? I mean, I'm not particularly attached to those ideas. I'm just throwing them out there.
Respond to that.
Let's get Laura.
Thank you. My approach to this would be just kind of to try to make it as practical as possible. There hasn't been an increase in a long time. We're due for an increase. The parameters that I would be in favor of would be to wait. Anything that we vote on would wait to be implemented after the next election. The closest district to us as far as size and kind of makeup would be Kenosha, who is currently at 65. I would be in favor of doing something that would bring us more in line with that. I don't know if if 65 is the right number or not. Let's see, but I would like to see something after that would involve regular increases, maybe not every year, maybe every other year. I don't know. But I know that right now I put in about 20 hours a week on school board stuff. I have more freedom than some in my schedule and what I can do. And that helps me a lot. But we do special meetings, school visits, subcommittee meetings, conferences, task force meetings, and then everything you see here at the board table. Lots of reading, phone calls, emails. There's quite a lot to it that I think that people don't see. And I, like I said, I'm at about 20 hours a week right now. So those are sort of the parameters that I would like to see implemented, but I can't decide what the current number should be. I don't know how to come up with that number, so.
65. Which is what Kenosha is.
So on that, agree with everything that has been said. I won't reiterate. Maybe just as an idea, if we moved it to 65 in April of 2020 and then increased it by $500 every year until 2022, we would get to 7,500. So we would do 6,500 this April, 7,000 the following April, 7,500 in April of 2022.
What would you do? I mean, if we're going to have this conversation now, and since it seems to be easy to push this off, it's easy to push this off, clearly. We should probably talk about that next step then too. Yeah. And so that future boards have a plan out ahead of them. And if we're dealing with it, let's deal with it for long term, if possible, if we have a stomach for it.
And then if we're capped on the amount that we can give raises to all of our employees, and if you applied that to us, I mean, you know, it's 2%. So if you just said, or 3%, somewhere in that neighborhood. So, I mean, 3% of $7,500 is going to be a little, you know, not a whole lot. But it is something, and then we don't have to address it 20 years down the road.
Do you plan on being here 20 years from now?
Be careful how you answer that. I'm just saying.
I'm kidding.
To your point, Rhonda, your reservation is exactly why nothing was done for 22 years. Actually, when I was first on the board, we were paid differently, and Sandy, you'll remember that. It was a flat fee per meeting.
$35.
$35 was a flat fee per meeting, and at that time, it was averaged up to around 4,000 and what 4,500 or something.
Maybe a little less. I think we bumped it up a little to the 48.
And so then that's how we established that amount, and that continued. But I think what we need to consider as well as we consider giving yourselves raises, we also need to consider the distribution of the labor on the board. That when you've got the same 4 people showing up for different meetings that require a quorum, then we need to make certain that, you know, everybody kind of pitches in and participates.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Thanks for bringing that up. I would actually, and I'm glad because I wanted to say that earlier, I would actually be able to go to more of those if I was making more money, because I would be able to take that time from my other job and come here. No, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's a feedback loop. Who can come, right? Who can come, because I have a job, right? And in that time away from that, if I'm not, you know, I have to be compensated. And again, I'm not doing it for compensation, but that is exactly the kind of point.
I give up work time too to come to these. I mean, and Eric does, and Laura does. But yeah, no, that's part of the rationale.
That's the
becomes
rub.
Part of the rationale.
Right.
Sure, go ahead.
So then, going back to that point, what is the number that will actually make an impact? Because if this is just to do it, that's even worse. Like, there should be some sort of concrete evidence. We know this number will drive this outcome. I mean, that to me, I can stand by that kind of a discussion. I can't stand by, well, we threw a number out there and we were hopeful it would attract what we were looking for, but we're not, you know, I feel like there should be some sort of, we know that this is the outcome we will get if we bring it there.
Christina?
So based on the number that I threw out, you said that was how much per month? $625. Okay, so what would that be divided by, let's just say an average of 15 hours a week?
10 and change.
$10 an hour? I mean, I think that's a very reasonable cost breakdown of someone's time is $10. That's, well, minimum wage is $7.50, 55, or right? Anybody? $7.45. So I mean, to me, $10 an hour is something that is doable for people. But I mean, is there hard evidence and data that's going to say there is a correlation between this and this? I would probably imagine there isn't, but I think we can say what makes dignified work, and what does that compensation look like?
Rhonda, yeah.
So what you just said with everything and how you broke it down, that's actually more evidence. That's more of, those are points of reference, I guess, is more what I'm looking at.
Just if I could add too, I know that when this conversation came up first, Pete Ross is not here this evening, but talked about the fact that in his experience, the board also received a separate compensation line for the different committee work that they did as well. So I think that you're not talking about the committee work, but that's part of, so Yeah, no, you don't get paid separately, but you're doing the organizational support, the teaching and learning. And what that does for, when you're talking about, and what the recruiters were talking about, is the importance of that alignment of what the central office is doing in partnership with the Board of Education, so there's a shared understanding. But that can come upward depending upon if you're talking insurance benefits or what have you. I mean, I know that we spent several hours supporting the questions as we went through insurance changes with the board. The board spent several hours, and not only just
I didn't do, oh, I did, sorry.
not only in person, but also the amount of behind the scenes time, just getting questions answered and asked, and then taking it out and getting constituents. So I would offer that others sometimes pay in that regard too. So it's additional, not just your regular board work, but often at least once a month, you're engaged in committee work as well. So put that out there.
Laura, then Christina. Yep.
Just something we've never talked about, but I think is very, very important, is the amount that our board president does, which is many, many more hours and a bigger level of responsibility than the rest of the board. I think I would like to address that as well.
Christina's next.
She was ready.
I just want to respond to what Michelle said, because I think that's a good point as well. The number of additional committees beyond that we serve on, late start, Title VI meetings that you're going to, other ways that we serve that we need board members to be participating on. And then I'll pause there and see if anybody has any comments for Laura's.
Eric?
I was just going to respond to the president thing. I was wondering about that too. I was interested in the data that we had that most districts don't do that. Madison was $300 more. Sun Prairie was $1,000 more, were some of the notable, but Beloit, Kenosha, Milwaukee, I believe, were all the same. So that same idea came to my mind, and I'm not opposed to it. I was just found it curious that most districts don't.
I think that just from observation, our board president is required to spend a great deal more time and has a lot more responsibility than the rest of us do. And no matter who's in that role, I think that's the case. And that time, I mean, if we're going to talk about time equaling pay, then I think we should consider that.
Eric, and then Rhonda.
Yes, and I would also add, I personally don't want to get into raising it and then saying like, oh, if you're on this committee and that committee, if we're going to raise it, then that's to signify all of that other work.
So we're having a discussion, we're talking about this, we have our own, obviously, context of what this is, and then we have an entire, we have 8 municipalities large of a community out there that's going to hear about this or not, but is there ever going to be a consideration of we're giving raises, but we're also implementing some term limits so that a person cannot just sign up for life? I mean, is that ever going to be a consideration? I'm a huge fan for every level of government, personally, of term limits. Would that ever be something that we could couple the raise with?
Is that something that we can do? Good idea.
You'll be pleased to know that I'm limiting my term to 22 years.
Yeah, I guess I agree with you a lot of the time, Rhonda, but not on that one. I think they're terrible at all levels of government. I respect your opinion on it. I just think it does I mean, we have elections are term limits, and if incumbents never lost here, but they have lost, and they've even lost outside of controversy too. So I don't think we have. But I do think that things. I think they might lose more if there's more of an incentive for people to run. My thought on the number was that if we did, do we know what year was it 2000 that we changed it, or was it even earlier?
20.
I mean, it was it was shortly after we got on, I think, like within a year. So if I just put into the calculator January 2000 4800, in October 2019. I see if it comes any. They don't have it yet for. In the latest available month of October, if we just did the CPI inflation, it would be 7,300. If we said 7,200, that would be exactly half additional. And so my thought was, if we increase it to 7,200 in 2 steps, and then right away increase the full day meeting stipend to 150. And then I would like to have it be something automatic after that. And I think between now and 2 weeks from now, I might have an idea what that. I mean, I don't want to. The thought in my head is the average base salary wage of all employees is also the board's increase, and that would generally be a couple percent. But I'm not studied enough to be able to actually propose that tonight. But I would say to go to 6,000 after the next election, 7,200 after the following election, or if July 1st made it work better for budgeting, then that's okay. I would just want to make sure that it was well known going into this election cycle that if we're doing this, that the salary is, I guess that's why I probably slightly prefer after the election, because I think we could figure out the budget end of it, and it would just start in May. Laura?
First of all, I think it's really important to have this conversation to talk about the nature of this position. We don't seem to do that very often, to actually talk about exactly what it takes to do it. So that, I think, is helpful. Is there a way to make it so that if, say, we have a recession or something happens where the economic situation for our district changes radically and quickly, that we can opt out
of a raise?
Yeah, of change, I mean, how do we implement this so that we have a release hatch if we need it?
I think it's a board policy that we could change anytime.
So it doesn't just automatically.
Mostly I think about this in terms of future boards. The automatic change for future boards to take it off the table so that they are that they don't have this this year after year never changing. But I'm not entirely comfortable with that. Automatic. I'd like to have something in place where they can say, not this year. This isn't right this year. We'll talk about it next year. Well, that completes mine.
Well, we have to, or we could leave it in our board policy that we have to review compensation every year. Right. So you couldn't, I mean, even as little as we've done with board compensation over the last 20 years, we've never done it completely silently because we've never completely silently done nothing, because it still had to come up for the obligatory, hey, are we gonna do anything about this year? Now let's not, and move on. So I think that should stay in the, although there would be, we might put in some ongoing thing as a guideline. I think the annual review on that April agenda is important and should stay. Anything else?
Do we want to make a motion on that for next week? I think your idea is.
You and I can work on the motion.
So I guess I would
For
intend
2 weeks.
I would intend to make a motion or offer a motion in 2 weeks. Something that would be, unless I hear substantial difference of opinion on this, something about going to $500 per month after the next election, $600 after that, and then some incremental increase, but still reviewed annually, and going directly to $150 for the all-day meeting stipend. Brenda?
One idea I would have regarding the all-day stipend, I know right now we give the stipend for if you attend a conference that's all day or an all-day board meeting. And I'm wondering if we want to look at, because to me the conference is voluntary to some degree. The board meetings that we set are pretty much expected that you have to be there, or do you want to just keep it across the board?
Go ahead.
I hear what you're saying, Brenda, but it puts different board members in a different position when some people can afford to take off and others can't. So if I was compensated for that, then I actually could go. If I'm not, then I literally can't afford to not go, and then I don't have the knowledge that other people have at the board table.
Yep.
So it is a choice, but not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's fair.
Anything else on that? Okay, so we'll move that forward, and then we'll have something out there for a motion that we can go as is. We can amend or whatever we need to in at the next meeting. All right. Moving ahead then to human resources discussion item and public comments. We have two. First is the 2020 and 2021 school calendar.
Good evening. You have a draft copy of the calendar for your consideration. The calendar was created collaboratively with a stakeholder group and based upon data that was gathered through various meetings of stakeholder groups as well. This calendar is very similar to the calendar we currently have this year. It varies based on the way the holidays fall. But it is very similar in structure and content to this year's calendar. Our committee would like to propose a second calendar and moving the cycle ahead of time, and we'll be convening again beginning in December to consider some more creative options and further input and feedback from all of the stakeholder groups to move forward to the board an additional calendar for approval to get in front of. So we would have a 2-year cycle similar to what used to occur. We did not bring both of those forward to the board at this time because we needed additional time to ensure stakeholder input.
All right, questions, Eric?
It's just some curiosity things and wondering if these conversations came up. It's kind of weird this year in this year, 2020, that Labor Day is so late. Was there ever any consideration to starting on Monday, August 31st?
We
Can't.
State law.
Correct. We did have conversation around that, and the one.
Oops, sorry.
The one thing that we did more strategically this year is to really talk about the professional learning opportunities that we're extending to our new hires, to our existing staff, and how that looks within the August calendar time. And one of the really nice things about the calendar proposed is that there's a really nice soft start into the school year where there's a 4-day work week for the teachers with the professional developments within the building and district days. An extended weekend there where they could choose to work on Friday if they wish or need the additional time, but that would be a day that is not figured into the calendar. The following week is also a 4-day calendar then with the way the school year starts, and then the Labor Day holiday. So there's 3 4-day weeks as we ease into the calendar year.
Thanks. I was just curious on that. Curious on any discussion around the way that parent-teacher conferences fall. I think I saw it both ways. Sometimes there's 2 days and they're in the same week, and sometimes they're in back-to-back weeks. I'm curious about that conversation.
There was quite a bit of conversation around that, and one of the things that's considered as that is planned for is the impact on families who may have children at multiple levels. And that then has an impact sometimes in how they fall within the weeks. That is an area that the committee would like to explore further in looking at what that looks like and what it could potentially look like.
And then, sorry, I got one more, then I'm done. How many snow days are built into the schedule?
I think one of the pieces we talked about is really looking at cold days and snow days too, and have to include those for students. What we found in last year and in talking with others too is that there's employees who have vehicles and access versus children walking to school, and so some school districts have been addressing those differently for employees versus students. So, but there's still the legislation, and I know Brenda just asked about this recently, the legislation that was proposed that if your school scored on exceeds expectations, you had a different timeline for class time, if I'm saying that accurately, but that did not move to the best of our knowledge. So, but anyway, so we've got snow days built in, and let's hope enough.
It's now based on instructional minutes too versus the set number of days, which changes the way that is figured and then reconfigured based on need or use. There is a day in May that is built in that will be an optional day that if we do not need for weather will then be a day with no school in session, and if we need it, it's there. The early releases are also planned to allow some flexibility, and the timing of those was also considered to be friendly should we need the instructional minutes.
So the May one is the 3rd snow day or only one? So there's 2 in May that are built in days?
There's 3 days that are built in. That third one is that day
that
in
optional?
May.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, Rhonda?
So it has been brought, especially the last 2 years, we've had to add even more days because of the weather, and it seems to be a pattern, and based on what we've seen in the first couple months of winter, I think it would be fair to say that could happen again. I have had comments from teachers and from parents that would we ever consider adding 5 minutes, 6 minutes, because what I've heard from parents is trying to then scramble because they have a system in place and then they have to scramble for that. And then I've also heard from teachers that those early release days, it works out for students, but it doesn't actually work out for teachers because they basically use that as professional development and then that gets scrapped.
We received really balanced input on from various stakeholder groups regarding the early releases versus full day staff development. That's one area that we wish to explore further that the committee will begin looking at in December. I know that the time and the school start time committee is also looking at the instructional minutes and what the impact there may be. That definitely intersects with the school calendar and what we would look at for the snow days. And you are correct, there is a desire to explore the minutes and how that may look more creatively within the calendar. And that again is why we are taking more time in developing that following year's calendar for consideration.
Other questions? I would just say about the August 31st, if it was, I've really given serious thought in other years, and if it didn't work out so well with a 4-day, with the 4-day weeks like this, because in the past you would do a 3-day week in the last week of August, because you probably would have Labor Day be the first one, and you would step up with a 3, a 4, and a 5. And if it wouldn't make the first week a 5, I'm open in some future year to defying the mandate and seeing what would happen. I mean, I don't. Is there a punishment for districts in? I mean, I've asked this question. This isn't a new question. I've asked before. Okay, if we don't do this mandate, what happens? I remember one time I think it was, if we didn't do the mandate that I said, we would get tens of millions of dollars subtracted from our budget. Okay, we're not going to defy that one, but I think it would be, I think sometimes taking a stand is a good thing to do. However, this time, if anything, I would be more, and I'm okay with this calendar, I would be more inclined almost to start on the 2nd to step up, because I like the 3, 4, 5 step up, and that we'd be going the opposite way this time. Michelle?
Actually, there have been numerous times, and most recently, even the last legislative session, that there were many who have signed on for that effort and lobbied hard for it. And the summer different programs and things for families continue to be a pretty hard effort out there, so it doesn't pass ever to move it up. Andrew, I have no idea what kind of sanctions there would be. I know that there's opportunity, sometimes you can get a waiver, and some school districts have done that for special circumstance, but I'm not aware of any district that has defied the state statute.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's not, I guess it's something I used to talk about more in my edgier days, I guess. But I do know that the one time I asked about what would happen if we defy this mandate, the answer was prepared, because someone knew I was going to ask it, and in that case, it would have been a bad one to defy, because we would have lost all federal funding for it, and it was over something relatively minor too. But I think sometimes you have to, yes, districts, maybe occasionally eke out a waiver here and there. The legislative effort goes nowhere because of lobbying by the tourism industry, but it's also never, I think there's an element, and again, this is for a future year, not this year, but maybe the momentum and publicity that would be generated by a district doing it and seeing what happens and being prepared to pull out if there's negative consequences, if it comes down to that. Maybe that is what puts the discussion on a little bit more equal footing, I guess. But not this year. Christina?
I'm sorry, I have to just say, I love the fact that what makes us edgy is the idea of starting before Labor Day. I just so I appreciate your advocacy on that, Andrew. Because it is true.
And I really hope, we have to do something, and I think what I heard from people was that when we ended up in the really bad situation recently, where we had blown through all the days, and then we changed minutes on both ends of the day, that was unpopular, and I was, not all, but most of the feedback I heard was we'd rather you just put the extra day. That's what I heard. Maybe others heard different, but no, I think this is a good calendar. I like at least one of the days being mid-year, so you have that card to pull instead, because I'm assuming probably that you don't get as much as much educational value out of a tack on after the last day of school day. I mean, my kids had a vacation planned, that was out of state many months prior, that was starting the last day of school, and that's going to happen to people. So I was happy to see at least one in May there as an option for us. Anything else on calendar? All right, we'll move that forward, and then we have the telecommuting policy 531.
Melissa Thiel-Collar is going to join us to talk about that policy as well. Both of us worked on the draft of this, and again, included a lot of stakeholder voice.
Kind of a good segue as you're talking about the calendar and snow days, that's part of the reason we're coming forward with the telecommuting policy. In particular, last year, Dr. Lingenfeld talked about the days we were closed for cold days versus snow days, days when staff may be able to get here or maybe not because of the reliability or unreliability of vehicles, but still capable of performing work at home. We know for our teachers, their work days are built around the students' calendar, and there are snow days built into that calendar, and so they have a contract for 190 days of work, and that's based on students coming to school in the minutes and the hours of the day. But we have staff who work all year round and work 12 months, and for some of those staff members, they're able to bring a computer home at night and be able to work remotely for short durations. And so we have not had a policy in place for this. One of the things that Jean Marsh wanted to get done before she retired was to get this policy done. She had a good start on it, but she wasn't unable to finish it. So Terry and I took over from where Jean left off, and we're presenting that policy to you tonight with respect to the ability of staff to telecommute for those infrequent and few times that they're able to work at home, able to take that work home, but aren't able to be here in the office.
All right, questions or comments? That seems pretty reasonable to me. Easing into it. Brenda?
The intent as I read this is one of infrequent telecommuting usage. So it's primarily for snow days. I mean, if the person, their car broke down or something, I mean, would it be those infrequent kinds of things? And then it would be the person's supervisor that determines whether or not they're allowed to count work they've done at home on a particular day as work hours. Correct? Okay.
Is it other than from saying other than in the purpose statement, which says from time to time, is that a strong enough statement that the intent of this policy is occasional? And I guess I would add on to that, could there be certain unusual circumstances that are very position specific where it wouldn't be? I mean, I think usually, my company has pretty universal work remote in IT, which is, well suited to it. We also had a person who was a good employee who needed to move with his family from Texas to Texas, and he's able to do all of his work remote, and he actually was a full-time remote employee. But that's, so many of our jobs are face-to-face contact jobs that it wouldn't work, but I guess there's a couple special cases like maybe IT or something that maybe it could, but I think if we're wanting to, are we saying enough to assure people that we're talking about occasional, or do we need to say a little bit more?
So we balance that, Andrew, as we put this policy together, because sometimes you can be so specific that the policy is impossible to implement, and sometimes you can be so generic that people don't understand the intent or the way to implement the policy. So we had different versions of that going as we drafted this, and this is where, as Terry said, there were multiple stakeholders that provided input on this. I think if you look at in the definition section in B3, and you look at that the work performed must be suited and amenable to be performed through the telecommuting, be accomplished without disruption to the normal workflow and normal methods of communication, and not disrupt the delivery of instruction to students. And then number 4, telecommuting generally is not intended for the following situations: employees who do not reside near the district, a means of working from home on a full-time or permanent basis, and to replace family care arrangements, sick leave, FMLA, and workers' comp leave. If you think that language needs to be changed, certainly we can change that language, or if there's other areas where you think it can be made more clear. Because I also think about, we've had an employee who has had to have some significant surgery, and her job was not in front of kids. It was, doing other work, and could not come into the work environment, but was able to perform some significant work we needed done from her home. So again, that's not a one-day short-term snow day, but it was something that she was still able to do from home, and work that had to be done and needed to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost go the other way and say that the policy should be made when it made sense, not when, oh, it's not cold enough today, you have to come into work. I know that there are times in my job where, I need to sit in front of my computer for 10 hours and I need to be uninterrupted. And if I go into the office, people are going to come in and they're going to bother me, and I'm going to be inefficient, and I'm not going to get done maybe something that's time sensitive. And so if it's, hey, I need to hunker down and write this report or write this grant, there's no reason that I need to be sitting in my office to do that. Or people are coming to work sick and you're hacking and coughing, and hey, do I feel sick enough that I can't work? No, but do I want to be sitting at my desk sneezing all over the place and spread it? Those are, in my opinion, other opportunities to do something that makes sense. People can do their job. Not everyone, but we all have different perspectives on the work that we do. And if it makes sense that you can get something done and still be productive, but don't have to be sitting in these 4 walls, then I don't think that we should try to limit that. I also think that it's, to your point, the manager has to manage that, right? I mean, if you have somebody who's like, hey, you're 3 deadlines behind and you want to continue to work from home, and you're, okay, well, that's a performance management problem. So we have to make our decisions based upon our best employees, not on people who might be trying to take advantage of policies.
Christina?
Yeah, Eric, I agree with all that. The other thing too is simply, this is the future of work, right? And we have to meet people where they are. And if we want to hire the best and the brightest, and especially young people, they expect to be able to do this. To your point, people want to be treated like professionals. They want to have the autonomy to work when they work best. Different people have different schedules. And I think the more we can start to move in that direction, the better, because we have to attract the best and the brightest. And this is what people expect from work anymore. And to your point about the person who was home, you can do video conference calls. Basically everything you can almost do, unless you're in front of the kids, can pretty much be done anywhere if you have a computer.
Rhonda?
And isn't it probably also accurate to think about the potential or the future of this building and the workforce inside of it as we're having conversations, that could also change, and this would help with that?
I think it's, I don't, I mean, I might think of something, but I guess I would hope, I don't know how you can spell this out, but I hope we don't, outside of obviously a situation where, like, when you think about different building supervisors, there's probably very few people that an elementary school principal supervises that they would be able to grant telecommuting to, because all of them are kid contact or physical in the building, or almost all. But I hope it doesn't come down to a strict supervisor, lenient supervisor kind of thing, and that it's really, if it makes sense, it's going to get approved, and if it doesn't make sense, it's not going to get approved, and not this department does it and this department doesn't. And I guess it's one thing, I guess there is one place maybe a building principal, if a building principal supervised an online, someone who supervised online instruction, although hopefully there would still be some interactivity component, but on the days where they're just interacting remotely with students, then why not? But yeah, so I think this is a great step, and I'm glad to see it. Thank you. Right. Then we have setting future agendas, including meeting reschedule and any other topics. So do we want to take the rescheduled January 13, 2020 meeting first?
Sure.
Go ahead.
We did a follow-up with the facilitator, with Casey, to get her take on what she felt was needed for time. And the conversation earlier around board compensation was very timely in regard to the fact that she felt that if we are going to do the deep dive into the questions that I know the board wants to get at and really understand the data around the different opportunities that are available for the board and decision-making about moving forward with future facilities, that it will take more than a couple of hours. And so her recommendation would be to do an evening and then possibly a full day the next day, a day and a half basically, to address everything, because again, it goes right back to the importance of making sure that all the questions are asked, and that is a transparent process, and that people really have a shared understanding when they walk away as to what the board is thinking, so that we can carry out whatever the board is expecting to move the facility effort and redesign 2020, the potential changes forward as well.
So do you have recommended dates for that? Or what was
I
Casey
think
thinking in terms of dates?
I'm not sure we have any specific dates. Lori, do you recall if she had any specific dates? I don't think so. I think she was at the will of the board. Right.
So I guess we'll start with our board members interested in a Saturday meeting or would rather have a weekday night before and then a weekday all day.
Yeah, I'll speak up to that. I mean, just me personally, I've got a lot going on during the week with work and other commitments and school board stuff. And for me, it's easier to take a vacation day than it is to take a Saturday and Sunday away from my kids. That's sort of, so I wouldn't be real excited about a Saturday.
How many hours?
Casey said all day. I don't know,
I think
9 to 3.
I would say 6 hours, probably.
Or I mean, if it's during the week, we could schedule whatever. We could do a night before and then
I was
start
thinking
again
a day
at
for
2
6.
the next afternoon or something and work till 8 or 9.
depends. You could flex it that way.
Christina?
I'm sorry, so what's the total number of hours we want to meet? You're saying 8, so 6 and a 2?
Probably 9.
I would say 9 or 10 is what.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
6 and 4 is what
So
I
if we
was
did like
thinking.
a 5 to 8 the night before, like a 5 to 8 the night before, and then maybe like an 8 to 2 the next day?
Or a 2 to,
Or a 2 to,
depending on
yeah,
what
because
people,
that way I
yeah.
can still get in like a half a day.
Right. I mean, it might be easier to do the 2
2 to 8.
to 8.
Yeah.
And at least you're working
Mhm.
most of the day.
We don't have clearly defined what I think it's been up to the individual board member as to when to submit for a full day meeting compensation, but that might be, I would think at probably the 6 hour mark is for sure justifiable, and
Yep.
4 probably for sure isn't, and then maybe it's a little bit gray, but a 2 to 8 could work. I'm fortunate that with a little notice I could take a weekday off, and I also have flexibility on some weekend days, so I would just go with what works for others as long as there's enough notice.
So if the 13th worked for people, does the 14th work for the follow-up?
I'm already booked.
That's Saturday. Oh, I'm in the wrong month. Or what about, oh no, it's a Monday, never mind.
Do we have anything on the 20th right now? Or are we on the 27th?
Could we do the
20
evening of the 27th and then
like a 2 to 8 on the
Tuesday,
28th?
2 to 8?
You do it?
That works for me.
So what time on the
Yeah.
27th?
5 to 8, 27th, and 2 to 8 on the 28th?
6 and 9 hours.
9 hours, yeah.
2 to 1 on that?
8.
5 to 7 and 2 to 8.
5 to 8 and 2 to 8.
5 to 8.
I'm thinking.
Okay.
Michelle?
Just to me, I would hate to have it set so that at 8, if you had to stop and you needed another 15 minutes, that, so just kind of making that end time a little more flexible might be helpful the second day, but, I think you'll have a better sense of that after the first day as to where things are at and what more we can do the next day, so.
And we will be recording both of those?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So
The
that's
second day is the 28th.
Yeah.
From when to when?
2 to 8. 2 to 8.
Means we can't go to the island advisory.
What time does that start?
It starts at 4:15. But I hate missing those meetings, so a lot of stuff happens, but,
Is it here?
yeah.
Maybe.
Microphone, Laura.
Yeah, I'm not, yeah, I believe it's here, yes. So,
I mean, maybe it's something where you could step out, or each person could, because if we have a couple board members that are on the committee, maybe someone could catch the first half of it and come back. So I think it's important, and it's very sensitive right now. And I think a board member presence is important, but if you have two important things, I think you could probably work something out.
What day is the bilingual meeting? Oh, it's the Tuesday?
Tuesday after 15, is there,
What if we shifted and did the 28th and 29th? Tuesday, the evening of the 28th, and the afternoon of the 29th.
I'm working Wednesdays.
Although I have Wednesday afternoons reserved for district stuff. One of them is a meeting that could reschedule, and the other one is coaching chess that really can't. So
What if we did earlier on Tuesday, like 8 to 2, rather than 2 to 8?
Maybe even like, does anyone have a problem like meeting like at 7? Is that too early? Yeah.
That's too early for me.
Yeah.
What time is your committee meeting?
4:15.
So we could do.
John, is that, do I have the date right on the advisory board meeting on the 28th at, January 28th at 4:15 for bilingual?
Is 8 to 2 out of the question on the 28th?
I could do that, or 7:30 to 1:30.
I can do that.
And then that takes care of that.
Yeah, I guess I just thought 2 to 8. I thought the idea was for someone to work, to log a half day at work, and then because you're not then you're putting the 6 hours, some of it outside the work day. But I can do it.
I can just work later that night, so I can go back.
I would prefer the starting in the morning too, and probably the facilitators would too. They won't have that gap in the morning.
8 to 2?
Okay.
All right.
And then other agenda item requests. Rhonda?
Brought this up before, haven't heard anything back, just and continue to hear calls for conversation around the cell phone policy in the classrooms in schools. As well as, I would like us to have a discussion and consideration about the test fee, the assessment fee at Da Vinci. It's $20. I think that may provide some barriers for some families, so I'd like us to have a discussion about that.
Eric?
I don't know, can I add something about the cell phone thing? Or is that, I mean, talking about potential things, reflecting on what we did with the dress code, I know we've talked about wanting to get a meeting with the principals. Before we talked about cell phones at the board table, I would like to talk to principals about cell phones. I've heard about it too, so I'm interested in that topic, but I'd want to hear from principals before I sat up here and said what I thought about cell phones.
Rhonda? Yeah.
But I also think it's important because I'm not hearing from principals, I'm hearing from teachers.
Oh, I'm hearing from principals too.
You are? Okay, I'm not hearing from that.
I think we need to have the discussion about what we're going to do. But I know, in large part, teachers will enforce it at the classroom level, and then it would escalate to the administrator level on how you're going to, whether it be the hats or the cell phones. If we're going to implement a policy that students can't do something, the people who need to enforce it, teachers and principals, I'd want to hear from them before I share my ideas on what I think a solution to that would be.
So then what is the plan moving forward? Because I feel like I keep bringing this up.
I don't know.
Last week when I met with these two for the Student Services Board Work Group, actually two months ago, when you brought it up, we'd like to put out some survey questions along with the school climate survey to begin, just to gather information, and then form a committee that will look into best practices. What are some model school policies out there? We do know that the screen time has been a big issue, and more research is showing us that the less students are exposed to the phones, the more engaged in academics. So we'd like to delve into the research and do this right. So surveying students, staff, principals, parents.
Rhonda?
Thank you, I can send that message on. I appreciate that.
I do want to add that if we're going to do this right, it might take a little bit of time.
but we'll get the right results.
Michelle?
I want to just follow up with the fee for assessment at Da Vinci, and I would like a report on that as well. It was not something that I was aware of. So I don't know if others were aware of that as well. So I think we need a follow-up sooner than even a board discussion. I'd like to have a greater sense of what that is.
And it's located actually in the application for the listening sessions. That's where somebody brought it to my attention.
Appreciate that. Thank you, John.
And I'm not sure that to me, that can be answered and an update can be provided before we put it on an agenda. I think it can probably be worked on outside of a board meeting. And then if, you know, if we still want to have it at a board meeting, we'll bring it up at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, I would have, yeah, if it's removed by administration, then there's probably nothing to meet about. I guess I would like, yeah, I have one if others don't have. Okay, so I want there to be, even if it's an interim step pending a full wellness policy that would include the same thing. We've been talking about formally banning taking away recess as a punishment, which every time I say it, I will say doesn't mean recess at the same time, exactly when you want it, in the same way. But the idea that we're not taking away as a punishment, I'm not complaining that it's taking more time for an overall wellness policy that has a lot of pieces in it, but I heard from people that this is still going on. I addressed, and yes, I brought individual cases to management's attention, but there's a difference between bringing individual cases to management's attention where management does not have the ability to go back and say you violated board directive or policy when you took away that recess. This is serious. I don't think it's serious until there's a board policy or directive.
The District Wellness Committee has met and drafted language. The next step is for Dr. Langenfeld to share it with her parent committee for final feedback. We expect to bring this back to the board in January, February.
Okay, I guess okay, thank you. All right, anything else? Then that concludes organizational support.
All right, then I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.
You have been watching the Green Bay Area Public School District's Board of Education meeting. Please visit the school district's website, www.gbaps.org, to view the program again. If you cannot fully access the information on this video, please let us know the accessibility issue you are having by calling 920-448-2025 or by email at communications@gbaps.org. We will try to provide the information to you in an alternative format and/or make the necessary improvements to make the information accessible.